Hi, guys, and welcome to the very first episode of the rebranded Public History Podcast with Justin, Jake, and Molly.
Hey everybody, good to be with you today. I've told everybody here I've been looking forward to this for about a week, mainly because I like to learn new things, and I think the new structure on our show, how history lives in local stories, peoples, and places. I think we're going to do it in a really interesting way, which is leaning into that storytelling aspect of it. So Jake, how are you?
Doing good, and excited to be talking about my home region of Pennsylvania, which I feel like West Virginia, our listeners have heard quite a bit about.
Quite
But this
yes.
this is a story with some national implications, and yeah, it's really a nationwide story as well. So I'm excited for this one.
I've been looking forward to this more than a week, Justin. That. But we want to remind everyone to subscribe and follow along for new episodes exploring history that feels close to home, but also national stories.
So with today, well, let's get right to it. This is a Pennsylvania coal town and one of America's greatest athletes coming together. A tale of identity, struggle, and legacy. Drum roll, please.
Yes.
Jake, who are we talking about today? What are we
All right.
talking about today?
All right. So today we are going to be talking about the towns of Mauch Chunk and East Mauch Chunk, Pennsylvania. Some of my favorite named places in the Keystone State.
Mauch
Uh,
Chunk.
and we're also going to be talking about a famous athlete, arguably one of the greatest athletes in American history, and how those two topics come together. So I want to start with a little bit of history about Mauch Chunk. Again, I grew up not too far away from these towns,
If you could,
which
Jake, where in Pennsylvania is Mauch
yeah
Chunk? Like if I'm looking
yeah
at a map
so
of the state.
yeah so they are about if you're familiar, it's on the eastern half of the state. So you've got Allentown in the Lehigh Valley. Mauch Chunk is about 30 miles north from Allentown. It's about 80 miles north of Philadelphia as well.
Okay.
So we're
Okay.
in the eastern part of the state, in the Lehigh Valley. The Lehigh River runs right through the center of these what were originally two boroughs of Mauch Chunk and East Mauch Chunk.
Mauch Chunk is the best name ever.
You'll be happy to know that the towns collectively, when they have a different name now. We'll get to that as we get through the story. But Mauch Chunk and East Mauch Chunk were collectively known as the Chunks. And do you want to take a guess at what the people who lived in those boroughs were called?
Chunkettes,
Nope,
Were
chipmunks,
were
chip
they
chunk.
chunkers? Were they
they were
chunkers?
chunkers.
Chunkers.
No.
I like that.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, they're the chunkers.
I'm a proud chunker.
I
Yeah.
want to be a
Yep. So these towns really come into existence in the late 1700s and the early 1800s. As listeners, I'm sure, are probably already familiar, or if you follow my blog, I write a lot about anthracite coal, and that's what built these two towns on the Lehigh River. The hills around Mauch Chunk and East Mauch Chunk were all rich with anthracite coal, and the town is founded where all of this could be brought to the river. And eventually there's going to be a canal that's going to be built there, as well as the Lehigh Valley Railroad. It's going to come into these communities. It's going to connect it with Allentown, with Philadelphia, with New York, with the outside world. And all of this industry is really growing up in the middle of a fuel crisis in America in the early 1800s, as the eastern seaboard is running out of cheap firewood. And so the price of firewood for the growing populations in the eastern seaboard cities is causing some problems.
When
And now they have this new fuel source in anthracite coal that they can ship down.
when are we talking through, Jake? Like, is this like 1870s, 80s, or is this?
Oh no, early 1800s. So
Oh
anthracite's
wow, all
originally
the way back then.
discovered in the
Yeah.
1790s,
Okay.
in this vicinity, and then it's going to be the industry is really going to come to become an industry in the 1820s and 1830s as
I never realized it
stove
was that
technology.
early.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stove technology is going to improve so that people can use coal in their houses much more efficiently than your traditional wood fireplace in a house. So it really changes how Americans live on the East Coast, and Mauch Chunk is kind of the headquarters of this changeover in American home heating, as well as industry. Anthracite's going to be used in creation of iron. There's going to be anthracite iron furnaces. It's really going to build the iron industry in Allentown. You might be familiar with Bethlehem Steel, that's going to come about because of some of these industries that are being built up in the early 1800s. Now, the name of Mauch Chunk, which we've been talking a lot about, does come from a Native American name for that vicinity of Pennsylvania. It's from the Lenni Lenape language, and it means either bare place or bare mountain. And it gets to how much wilderness there was in that particular vicinity, even in the 1790s into the early 1800s as well. So it's a beautiful spot. It's a really beautiful location. I know I shared some photos with you guys beforehand just so you can get a visual of this place. It's still a beautiful location today as the Lehigh River winds its way through the mountains heading south, and it is going to be known as the Switzerland of America. Even in the 1800s, they're going to do some marketing and be like, this is the Switzerland of America, and becomes a bit of a tourist destination in the 1800s as well, with the Lehigh Valley Railroad coming in. It's pretty easy to get there from Philadelphia, so it's a first place in the anthracite region. It feels exotic. People come for visits. They also have these really cool railroads, switchback and inclined railroads that go up the side of the mountain that people can...
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm looking at one right now. How the heck?
Yeah, so these inclined railroads are put in the 1800s, and they become quite a tourist attraction. There's numerous stories written about travel writers coming in and people coming out and taking these inclined railroads up to the top of the various mountains around.
Does this predate the Pittsburgh Incline? For all those who are from Pittsburgh, know what I'm talking about? It does?
It does. This goes back to the 1840s and 1850s, and was a tourist attraction because it was so unusual.
We'll have to put it in the photos for all of this in the episode description or somehow, because like my mind has been blown once that the Pittsburgh Incline, which Pittsburghers would tell you is the coolest thing ever, was predated by Mauch Chunk, Pennsylvania. Yep,
absolutely.
Why were they branded as a Switzerland? Because of the mountains?
Yeah, because of the mountains and the way that the town is kind of tucked in among the mountains, so it kind of sits down in the bottom of the valley. And I don't know who gives that moniker, Switzerland of America, but they took it and they ran with it, and they're still using it today. So the town really starts to flourish in the 19th century with the canal and the railroad. You get your own Gilded Age baron in this time period, a guy named Asa Packer, who's one of the presidents of the Lehigh Valley Railroad. He also goes on to found Lehigh University as well.
Oh, yeah.
And he has a massive home right there in Mauch Chunk. And it's also the place for me personally where I learned on a tour as a kid that I really did not like visiting the homes of these Gilded Age barons. It was, one, very boring. I was like, oh, this table came from miles away, and this member of the family has sat for this portrait. And I'm just like, I just don't care. I really don't care. I was much more interested in like the life of the canal worker down at the bottom of the valley, like, some good social history there. Not so interested in those Gilded Age barons. I learned that at like age 10.
I'm just picturing 10-year-old Jake yelling about union busting and canal workers like running around this house like, Robert Barry, blah, blah, blah. That's, yeah, as a 10-year-old, I was playing video games and yeah, that's what I was doing with my 10-year-old self. So I'm glad doesn't surprise
me. You know me well. I was also playing video games and playing sports and doing that too, but I did have particular feelings about house museums, even as a kid.
Yeah.
The town also plays a key role in one of the 19th century's most controversial legal cases. Another topic that I always touch on when I'm talking about the anthracite coal region, which is the Molly Maguires. So this group,
I was going to guess if it was the Molly Maguires. It was
really
down there. Yeah.
So for those of you that may not be familiar, it's a group of Irish mine workers in the anthracite region of Pennsylvania that in the 1860s and 1870s around, there's some unions that are there trying to get organized for labor unions, and the Reading Railroad breaks one of those unions, and there's a lot of violence that comes afterwards that is going to be exacted on mining officials and local police and basically anybody that stands in these guys' way. And there's a bunch of people are arrested. Ultimately, about 20 people are going to be executed for murder and arson and other crimes. And some of those executions are going to happen in Mauch Chunk. So there's a courthouse there, and that was courthouse, and then also the jail. The jail's where the executions took place. 4 of them on one day, June 21st, 1877. And then 3 other men will be executed there as well. So put Mauch Chunk kind of on the map in the mid 19th century for this trial that was taking place, these series of trials that were taking place there.
This isn't it's without tangenting off the Molly Maguires again and having Molly Maguire episode 2.0. I remember from the Molly Maguire some sort of handprint.
Yes. Yep.
Is that Mauch Chunk?
That is Mauch Chunk.
No way. No.
Yep.
Gosh.
The handprint on the wall of the courthouse that Alexander Campbell, one of the convicted Molly Maguires, allegedly puts his hand in the dirt, puts it on the wall, the whitewashed wall of the cell as he's being taken out to be executed, and says, "This will stay here as a testament to my innocence." And allegedly the handprint has never left the walls there. You can still see it today. On a side note, I was in Ireland in early 2025 and went to Alexander Campbell's hometown of Dunglow in Donegal. So it was cool to go see where he was from. Really interesting character. Someone who may or may not have been involved in the murders, plural, that he was accused of. He was a tavern keeper in some of the mining towns of Carbon County, Pennsylvania, and was accused of being involved in some of these murders, and is executed on that day where 4 people are executed, June 21st, 1877. So yes, Justin, that is correct. And I particularly like this tangent because you know how much I like talking about the Molly Maguires. Through the 19th century, the town continues to thrive. There's Mauch Chunk proper, which sits right on the Lehigh River, and then on the kind of high ground on the east side of the Lehigh River is East Mauch Chunk. It's really a residential area with kind of like a more traditional main street of what we would see in other American towns. And the town continues to thrive. Towns continue to thrive through the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, until about 1920. In the 1920s, similar to what happened with wood in the Eastern Seaboard in the early 1800s, anthracite becomes extremely expensive to mine because you have to go down really deep to get it, and people are moving over to oil. So there's industries changing. Fuel needs in America are changing as America is changing over to oil, and this means that Mauch Chunk begins to fall onto hard times. The Great Depression is going to make this 10 times worse. A lot of communities in the anthracite region never recover from the Great Depression. Where I grew up in Pennsylvania, a little town called Williamstown, one of those places that after the Great Depression hits, it's really kind of the end of economic vitality for those communities because they were built on one thing. They were built on the extraction of coal. And so unlike many other communities across America, these towns in the coal region really don't come back after World War II. World War II helps to really bring the United States out of the Great Depression. It's not going to be the case for places like Mauch Chunk. They're not going to find... They're struggling to find their feet and find a way forward for their communities.
You just described my hometown. You just described like so many places around the Appalachian, like throughout Appalachia, throughout Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky. So like well, I'm not trying to lead the witness here, but like how, so I don't know if any viewer has sat down and typed in Mauch Chunk, Pennsylvania into their Google app. Please do not do it yet, because I did. And then I realized that the name is, spoiler alert, different. I'm not trying to be, but like, I just think it's interesting to point out that you just described so many towns. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming what you're going to take us to next is they try to be different.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I like
They're going to try what American towns and cities have been trying since this time period, is revitalization. Try to figure out a way forward for their community. And in the early 1950s, they're thinking about, okay, what's going to be the industry moving forward. They had some ideas, but they didn't have a lot of resources. They didn't have a lot of money. There's a lot of empty storefronts in their town. The anthracite industry's dead. The canal's gone. The railroad is struggling as well because it's chiefly what it was carrying before was coal. So they're trying to figure out what the future is. And so there's a leader of this effort. His name's Joseph Boyle. He's the editor of the local newspaper, and he grew up in this community. His father bought the Mauch Chunk Times News in the early 1900s, and when Joseph Boyle comes around, he's basically living and working in a newspaper office his entire life. And so he becomes one of the leading voices of the revitalization of Mauch Chunk, and for both Mauch Chunk proper and East Mauch Chunk. So they're trying to figure out what the future is going to be. And they have some ideas. This goes back to the late 40s, but there's not a lot of success. So in 1952, Boyle is going to write this editorial titled Money in the Bank, which I think is just, I'm very intrigued when I came across this. And he discusses that there's an old bank account in the Mauch Chunk National Bank that had been there since 1947, which was really the fund for this revitalization effort. And it had $4,000 in it. That was it. And so he is thinking about this bank account and how they can get more funds into it. And so he and other business leaders in the community, they come up with this campaign to raise money. And it's called the Nickel a Week plan. And basically there's 6,000 residents at the time between the two boroughs. And the thought was, if each one of them gave 5 cents every week for an entire year, they would raise $25,000 was the goal. And they'd get people outside the community as well donating, people that maybe used to live in Mauch Chunk as well. And they do a whole PR campaign around this as well. And so they launched this at the end of 1952, early 1953. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what nickel a week in 1952? What does that get you? Is it like getting a Starbucks today for the whole week? Like, is that the inflation rate that we're talking about?
If only those Mauch Chunkers weren't drinking lattes every day, they could revitalize their town. So by June 1953, they had raised $5,000. And then the campaign really went into overdrive in the summer of 1953. By July, they had $10,000. By September 1953, they had reached $15,000. And by this point, they had become a national sensation as well. The Associated Press ran a story about this campaign, and they called it, quote, citizenship at its best. And because it's the Associated Press, that story appeared in hundreds of newspapers all across the country. And it really raised the national profile of Mauch Chunk and what they were doing, and people loved this. There was ideas coming in from all over the country, and prospective businesses that might move their operations or open a new operation in the vicinity of Mauch Chunk and East Mauch Chunk. They're writing and sharing, what they would need to be able to start their business there. And so there's this PR campaign's really being successful. And in addition to getting the word out there, they're also getting donations in as well. So they get donations from all over the country. There's some coming in from St. Louis and Kansas City and up and down the eastern seaboard. People that used to live in Mauch Chunk, grew up there, they're donating and saying, oh, they'd love to see our hometown is trying to move forward into a new age. And as they're getting more press attention, we have a new technology that is around in the early 1950s. It's television. Joseph Boyle is sending these clips out to anybody, newsrooms all over the country. He's also sending it to TV stations, and he gets some attention from a TV crew in Philadelphia with WPTZ, Channel 3 in Philadelphia, and they send a camera crew out. And on September 30th, 1953, about a 15-minute segment airs on the local news. And because it's 1953, and there are 2 channels at this time, and people are starting to get TVs into their homes, They had an estimated viewership of 5 million people. For this segment. And this segment is really going to this changes the trajectory for this town, because it gets the word out there.
How many people are around America who have even heard of Mauch Chunk at this point? There's people in St. Louis and all across that are like, love Mauch Chunk. I'm sending them my 5 cents a week. Like, how did they do this? Just really good PR?
Yeah, it's really good PR. Joseph Boyle is like prolific. Like literally every issue of his newspaper is like full of like, you know, the Kiwanis Club donated $4.50, and you know he's one of these big boosters for. It's
like the first trend, the first viral like trend is Mauch Chunk, Pennsylvania.
It has a like a GoFundMe vibe.
That's what I was thinking when you were talking. I was chuckling because I was like, how did they GoFundMe in the early 50s? Like,
yeah,
yep. This is how it happens. That WPTZ story is really going to change the trajectory for this community, because there is a person who just happens to be in Philadelphia at the time that it airs, and she watches the segment, and she is very impressed by the efforts of this town. And her name was Patricia Thorpe, and she was the widow of American sports icon Jim Thorpe, who had died in March of 1953. She is so moved by this segment. She's impressed by this town, so she hops on a train to Mauch Chunk and goes to the town and is like, I want to meet Joseph Boyle. I want to meet this guy. And this is where the story just kind of gets a little weird.
Well, before we continue, Jake, can you, in today, 2025, Jim Thorpe is who, right? Are we talking like, is he like LeBron James? Like, is he like who is Jim Thorpe in the American, like, I want to say zeitgeist of 1952?
You'll be happy to know, Justin, that my notes here, my next
we're on the same page. We just know each other.
Who was Jim Thorpe?
Who was Jim Thorpe? I like that. Good. Yeah. Because I'm like trying to rack my head of like, I don't know, Tom Brady's, well, I guess they're divorced now, but Tom Brady's ex-wife, like, why is it the same as like Giselle, like walking into some podunk town in Iowa and being like, I loved your segment, by the way. Yeah. I loved your TikTok or Instagram reel. I want to meet the person who made it.
Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of unique to this time period, I feel like. And also this is just this is a weird story how this turns. So I don't know if there's a comparison in terms of this situation of what's about to happen. But I will say that, you know, Jim Thorpe was at the time, you know, the most well-known athlete in the United States, even though after he dies, even up through the time when he was out of sports. I mean, he was looked back upon as being this incredible figure within the American sports community. Has a number of different awards named after him. I remember from going back to my childhood, my NCAA football video games from the in the 2000s. Got to get that Jim Thorpe award for your best defensive back. And there's a number of different other awards as well for Thorpe. But he got his name really, from playing a variety of different sports, including baseball, football, and then also a starring role in the 1912 Olympics. But before we get there, who was this guy? So where did he come from? He has a really incredible story. He was born in 1887 near a little town called Prague. Not in Europe, but in the Indian Territory. So this is before Oklahoma's statehood. So this is Indian Territory. He was a member of the Sac and Fox Nation, and Thorpe's Native American name given to him, which I will probably be butchering, so apologies in advance, was Wathohook, meaning bright path. And that really, from the moment he is born and given that name, it kind of fits him perfectly for what's about to happen. So as a young man, he's going to get caught up in I would say, one of the most scandalous pieces of this era of American history. It's not just in the United States. This is also happening in Canada at the same time. Thorpe is going to be taken from his hometown, from his family, and he is going to be taken to the Carlisle Indian Industrial School near Carlisle, Pennsylvania. This was a place that was founded to assimilate Native American youth into white American culture. So they didn't have a choice in the matter of being sent to these schools. That, when he's at Carlisle, and I've encountered a couple of these other students that are there, sports is a big part of their education. They are encouraged to participate in sports, baseball, football being the two biggest. I've encountered in my hometown research of baseball in the early 20th century, like 1906, 1907, that in the summer, some of these kids would come out and play on these semi-professional teams. They get paid a little bit of money, and they have a place to live for the summer and play sports. Jim Thorpe was one of these kids. He goes out while he's at school and plays baseball. Actually makes a little bit of money. That's going to come back around in just a little bit. But it's football where he really makes a name for himself. And he's going to play under a legendary figure in American football. His coach was Pop Warner at the Carlisle Indian School, and he is going to reach new heights while playing for Carlisle, and it's going to accelerate him onto the Olympic team for the United States at the 1912 Stockholm Olympics. And this kid comes out of nowhere. He stuns the world. He ends up winning gold medals in both the decathlon and the pentathlon. And he dominates these events. It's not even close. And he is going to be given his gold medals by Sweden's King Gustav V. And he's going to tell Thorpe, quote, "You, sir, are the greatest athlete in the world." Huh. And that nickname kind of sticks with him. I've also seen an account of how Jim Thorpe responded to this, which I don't know if it's true or if it's I love it though. He allegedly responds with, "Thanks, King," which I just think is amazing. So I want that to be true.
Yeah, it's a 2025 response there. "Thanks, King."
Thanks, King.
Yeah, yep. So I hear like a high school kid talking about right now.
So the glory, unfortunately, isn't going to last very long from his Olympic victories. A year later, he's going to get stripped of his medals because it was discovered that he had once earned a few dollars playing semi-professional baseball. And there was very strict rules about amateur, that you needed to be an amateur athlete to participate in the Olympics in this time period. So it was pretty cruel. He's stripped of his medals. But despite that, his reputation as this great American athlete is going to stick with him. And he's going to continue to compete in professional sports in the United States after that. He's going to play professional baseball for the New York Giants and the Boston Braves, among other teams as well. And he's going to become one of the first stars of professional football in the country as well. And he's going to participate in helping to found the National Football League in 1920. And he even served briefly, before it gets called the National Football League, and had a previous name. He served as one of the first presidents of the league. So he's affiliated with professional football right from the start. But as time goes on, that fame begins to fade a bit. He runs out of money, which is quite common for athletes, professional athletes at this time. Professional sports did not pay a lot. It's nothing like today. And there's also no labor protections for any of these players as well. So there's there's certainly no pensions, no guarantee for assistance if they get into financial trouble. They were really living pretty hard lives. And so by the 1940s, he was living a really hard life. He was working odd jobs. He struggled with health problems and with alcoholism, and drifted around the country. He eventually ends up in California, and he actually has a film made about him in 1951. It's a Jim Thorpe All-American debuts, and Burt Lancaster plays him. plays Jim Thorpe. And Thorpe actually is in some of the in the movie as an older man, and he also plays various parts in films. One of the things he did in California was kind of being an extra on set. This is a time period of American Westerns, so as a Native American himself, he would often play Native American kind of extras in some of those Western films. That didn't pay a lot either, so he was very much struggling towards the end of his life. And ultimately, he dies of a heart attack in March of 1953, and he was 65 years old at the time of his death and nearly penniless. And he has his third wife. He had 2 previous marriages. So he's married to Patricia Askew. And they originally she and the family, as well as his hometown in what is now Oklahoma, they are able to raise money to get the body shipped from California back to Oklahoma to be buried near his hometown. And that's where the funeral takes place in April of 1953. But there was these extensive plans for how they are going to build a memorial for him near his hometown. They named the local high school football stadium after him, Jim Thorpe Stadium. But there's this idea to have like a grand grave for him and a memorial to his athletic achievements. And they go to the state legislature to raise money for that. And the governor initially is like, yeah, this is a great idea. And then when the $25,000 price tag gets to his desk and the bill had been passed, gotten through the legislature, gets to his desk, and he vetoes it. And Patricia Thorpe, pretty pissed off about that. And so she actually, shortly after that happens, without notifying the rest of the family, and there are kids from the previous marriage as well, previous marriages, without notifying any of the family or people in the hometown, after this veto, she takes the body from a mausoleum where it was kind of waiting to be buried.
Okay.
She takes the body and takes it to Tulsa in Oklahoma, and then sets out across the country looking for some place to bury Jim Thorpe.
We need more information on taking the body.
Yes.
So you're telling me, like middle of the night grave robber stuff, she just decides to take the, like, how's she carrying? Like, does she get her hench? Like, I just need, like how? It's basically
unclear how she's doing this, but yeah, she's it is in a moment of pique that she's going to do this. There are newspaper reports about her doing this as well. And
doing
this gets
after the fact, or doing this like
after the fact, after the body has been taken to Tulsa.
Right, but like, I don't know. Is she like on the train going east, and it's like, oh hey, by the way, come see Jim Thorpe's body on this train by this random woman. I guess not random woman, his third wife, but like, okay.
So this is where it gets to some of the controversy around this, because the Thorpe family has a view of Patricia Thorpe that's going to come up later, that she was basically looking for a payout to take his remains. She was looking for money. That's what the family believes. Now they're going
to have to pay for him to come home, like. What
like a hostage situation where the hostage is already dead?
It has a little of that vibe. She does, he died penniless. She doesn't have much to trade on in her life except his name. So she's kind of working with what she's got here, I guess, is a charitable way of looking at this. So it gets to the point, like, why was she in Philadelphia? Well, and why is she so eager to go to this little town of Mauch Chunk a few months later?
She still have his body in Philly?
No, so the body's back in Tulsa.
Okay.
So she's put it in essentially storage. I don't know, temporary burial. And so she is now, we flash forward to October of 1953. So the body's been moved from Shawnee, Oklahoma, where the funeral taken place and where the memorial was supposed to be built. The body of Jim Thorpe is now in Tulsa. and his widow is now in Philadelphia. And in early October, she goes to Mauch Chunk because she had seen this video story on the local news. She hears about the nickel a week campaign. She's, so excited to go meet Joe Boyle, the editor of the Mauch Chunk Times News, and hear all about this campaign that they're running to revitalize their town. So Joe Boyle tells the story of meeting Patricia Thorpe. This is how he says this goes down. He says, quote, "I was standing in the National Bank talking to Jerry Jackson, the cashier, when this woman came in. She went up to Hal Bitterline and said, 'Where's Joe Boyle?' So Hal sent her over to me, and she introduced herself as Mrs. Jim Thorpe. She had been visiting in Philadelphia when she heard of this unique nickel-a-week plan, which we were then developing, with the idea of bringing industry to our town. Under this program, each resident would contribute 5 cents a week to the fund. She was impressed by a small town trying to do a big thing with a little thing, a nickel. Before leaving, Mrs. Thorpe proposed the idea that if we would consent to change our name to Jim Thorpe, she would bring Jim's body here, and then the National Fraternal Order of Eagles, of which he had been a member, would create a memorial so that he could be properly edified. Then she left."
Okay. Molly, I don't know if you want to go first. I have some questions. I have some thoughts.
I just have Gold Digger playing in my head this whole time. My girl is a con artist.
How did she also know he was at the bank? Like, did she just shake down the whole town, like running house to house?
Yes. Did you hear her? She came in. She was like, I know he's here. Which one are you?
Which one is he? Like point me out to him. Like, that is, like.
She did take a dead body.
He did take a dead body across the country. So yes, I guess if the shoe fits.
No, the body has not. Well, the body did travel from California to Oklahoma.
Yeah, multiple times. She's taken it across the country multiple times.
Yeah, we're not there yet. So they haven't come to an agreement.
Oh,
yeah. Agreement.
So Joe Boyle thinks that this is an impossible idea. He thinks
Thanks, Joe Boyle. I'm glad you're the rational one in this story.
But as he begins to ask fellow members of these committees that they've created to revitalize Mauch Chunk, the more that they kind of fall in love with this idea.
Don't do it, Joe. No, don't do it.
And so they ultimately come to an agreement with her.
Oh my God.
And Jim Thorpe would be buried in Mauch Chunk, a town that he never visited when he was alive. And as part of this agreement, there is no indication that there is any large exchange of money for this. The town did pay to have the body shipped from Tulsa to Philadelphia, probably about $500 is the estimates that I've seen for how much that would have cost. But there's a foundation that's created as well. There's some initial crazy ideas. They're going to start a cancer and heart hospital there, the Jim Thorpe Hospital in Mauch Chunk, now going to be called Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. There's even an idea to try to get the National Football Hall of Fame in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania as well. They're shooting as high as they can get here.
Well, at least that's kind of like related to him. Did he have cancer? Is that why they wanted a cancer?
I'm not sure the cancer connection. He died of a heart attack, which is why they like the heart piece of it comes in. Yeah, so they ultimately do come to an agreement, and the body is brought to the soon-to-be named town of Jim Thorpe in February of 1954.
Okay.
I like to say a town he never visited.
Right. And you said, so the payment we have record of is the, $500 to get his body across the country.
Correct.
That's the only payment we have record of.
Correct. In all of the reporting at the time and her public statements, which of course these would be her public statements, it's really about furthering the legacy of Jim Thorpe is what that's the angle that she's working. And that's really the focus. So she says. Again, the Thorpe family doesn't necessarily believe that, but there is no hard evidence for this allegation that that she has paid a handsome sum of money or anything for this.
So she's saying Oklahoma wouldn't do it. And
correct.
Then this other town that raised a bunch of money. And so I went to them and they're going to do it. That's
But it
her.
doesn't even
Correct.
sound like it's that much money. Like
So the memorial that they end up it's into the tens of thousands of dollars that's going to go into these.
So they're footing the
efforts.
bill for the memorial.
They are footing the bill for the memorial.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't want to
We're
sound like
getting there.
I understand this yet. I'm just saying that little piece of this makes sense. Okay.
Yep. So that nickel a day campaign really morphs into the Jim Thorpe Memorial.
Where does the town folk
So they
Go ahead.
have a say in this. They have a say in this. So there is some opposition. But it's funny. The opposition is to one piece of this whole project. So where this starts is like the idea of there being a Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, would be the uniting of Mauch Chunk and East Mauch Chunk, the two separate boroughs that had their own identities, even though they were referred to collectively as the Chunks. You know how small towns are. They have their own little rivalries. So like the head of the fire department in East Mauch Chunk was like, heck no, I don't want to join with Mauch Chunk. This is stupid. But later on, he's like, but actually, I do kind of like the idea of having Jim Thorpe's body here. So they're kind of all on board with this, and there is a vote that actually takes place. So all of this, in order to unite the two boroughs of Mauch Chunk and East Mauch Chunk and create Jim Thorpe, there was the requirement that there needed to be a citizens' vote on this. And that takes place in May of 1954.
Okay, so it's a special election. It's like a special election.
And it is like 90 to 10 in favor of 90% to 10% in favor of this effort.
You know what? Good for them. Trying to think of now, Jake, this is bad because now I'm just thinking of I don't know, LeBron James, Minnesota, and Tom Brady, Florida, and Wayne Gretzky, Alaska. Like, there we go. This is an avenue I think people need to go down now because apparently this is a good idea.
Yeah, but Wayne Gretzky in Alaska makes sense because it's cold. It would be like Wayne Gretzky, Costa Rica.
It's
something totally just totally different and not at all related.
Nothing at all. Yeah. Yeah.
And the fire department saying hey guys, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. Was anyone Jim never came here?
No, there was not a lot of opposition to this that's voiced at the time that this is going on. It feels very much like it had this crazy momentum to it, that it kind of like that GoFundMe piece of this, like that
Let's go viral. Let's go viral and let's make the town Jim Thorpe.
Yeah, and they do. So in May of 1954, it officially becomes Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. So Mauch Chunk, East Mauch Chunk are no more. Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania is here.
Remember the Chunkers.
Remember the Chunkers.
Remember the history they took from us.
So in the years that followed, the fundraising for the memorial keeps going, and there are efforts to get they continue to try to get new businesses to relocate to Mauch Chunk. That was to Jim Thorpe now. That was the original intent of this whole nickel a week campaign, was to economically develop or redevelop these towns, and that never works. But what they do have is a memorial to Jim Thorpe. And they've raised the funds for that. There's a memorial and a mausoleum that was dedicated in May of 1957. 5,000 people attend the dedication of the memorial. And subsequently, there have been several statues of Jim Thorpe also placed there as well. Now, how about Thorpe's family? How do they feel about all of this? I looked through the newspapers in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and in the 1950s, when this all goes down, there's actually a brief editorial that just says that they're thankful that Jim finally has found a final resting place. And they also give credit to the people of Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, for their efforts to memorialize their hometown son. And even though it's in this far-flung place, like they're moved by the efforts of the residents of Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. Thorpe's family, so he has a number of children, and one of his kids, a gentleman named Jack Thorpe, is going to come up in this story. I found an account of him visiting in 1974. There was a story in the Allentown Morning Call newspaper about his and his family's visit. They drove across the country from Oklahoma to Jim Thorpe to see the memorial and the grave, and asked about why they had traveled all that way. Thorpe says, quote, "I thought it would be good for the children to learn a bit about their grandfather."
Wow.
And he's actually asked because earlier that year, there was a lawsuit that was being threatened by a lawyer in Oklahoma with some support from some pieces of the family that was seeking the repatriation of the body from Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, back to Oklahoma. But there are some voices within the family as well that don't go along with it. And they actually deny it in the press. They say we don't support this, and it kind of goes nowhere. Jack Thorpe is asked about this lawsuit when he is in Jim Thorpe, visiting his father's grave. And he says, "I don't have any comment. It's not happening. I don't want to say anything about this." Which I think is
74?
1974. So around this time, there's actually another vote that takes place that's essentially like to confirm this, that they want to continue to do this because there's now been some opposition that has been voiced. And the vote is much closer. It's not 90-10. It's more like 60-40 in favor. So there is some changeover in public opinion about this that is taking place. And that voice is going to be there. There's going to be people that are looking back to, why did we get rid of Mauch Chunk? Why did we do this? This also feels a little icky. And that's going to grow and continue to grow. And now we're into the 21st century. And Jack Thorpe comes back into the story. He is going to take the furthest steps towards getting his father's body back to Oklahoma. In 2010, he sues the borough of Jim Thorpe to seek the return of his father's body under the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act that was passed in 1990. Now, this was a novel use of that legislation because that was specifically, and this has been relevant in recent years as well, as several museums have had pieces of their collection repatriated, taken out of their collections. This court case is saying essentially that the borough of Jim Thorpe is a museum. That is what the Thorpe family's attorneys, that's the how they are looking to use that legislation. Based on how it's written, that's the argument that they have to make. What's pretty remarkable is that a federal district court initially agrees. And so there's an initial judgment that comes down that says, yes, this is a violation of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, and that the body should be returned to Oklahoma. Of course, the borough of Jim Thorpe is going to appeal this, and it's going to work its way through the courts for the next 5 years, back and forth. Ultimately, the Supreme Court it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court in 2015. Yep, the Supreme Court in 2015 is going to refuse the case. And so the previous appeals court judgment, which said that the borough that this was not a violation of this, they did not need to go through with the repatriation of the body. And so the borough of Jim Thorpe won that case. And so it's quite likely that Jim Thorpe will forever remain interred at the former boroughs of Mauch Chunk and East Mauch Chunk. So that is a long journey we've been on together.
Yeah, I just like, I had, it wasn't that long ago, I guess is what I'm getting at. It's like, as you were talking about this, like, I was like, okay, yeah, like this is one of those weird quirks of American history from, like, the 1820s or 30s or whatever.
Nope.
Modern society, there's no way it's happening today. And sure enough, there's a Supreme Court case in 2015, less than a decade ago, depending on how you do it.
Yeah. So what's going on in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania today? Or as I continue to refer to it on first reference in my public history content, I refer to it as Mauch Chunk, Pennsylvania. And I say kind of in parentheses, like, also known as Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. Because this feels very icky to me. It always has. It feels very strange that this all happened the way that it did. And
Well, what
but
happened
today,
to the wife? Like, where's the wife?
so she dies a few years after that. Again, not a major figure at all. And Jack Thorpe dies shortly after the Supreme Court case as well. So we're kind of exiting that period of that lived memory, that lived experience. And so it's kind of just become, and I'll be interested to see where the memory of this all goes, because as we've left that lived experience, and now more young people learn the story and they're like, this feels a little weird. Like, how did this happen? It'll be interesting to see how that goes. I will say I've seen more, and when I post content about these communities, I have gotten comments back from people saying, like, we should have never changed the name. This was a weird, why did we do this? Should change the name back, give the body back. I just don't think that that's ever, I'd be very surprised if there's ever going to be momentum for that kind of effort, at least in the near future.
Yeah. And I just like, I like you said, getting out of the lived experience, I think for public history, if we want to tie this into public history, I guess, or how we tie it in, right? Of like, that is something I think we're going to struggle with, not just with this instance about Jim Thorpe and Mauch Chunk, right? But like, we are getting out of the lived memory of the not to tie everything back to World War II, but like the World War II generation and like going forward, right? Of like, I'm with you, and I don't know the answer to this, of this like weird inflection point where we're starting, and I don't think that's a unique to right now, right? We've been getting out of a living memory of one area forever, right? Like I'm sure there were people in the 1920s and 30s that were saying like, oh, we're getting out of the living memory of Civil War era things, right? Like it's this weird, it's interesting, and I guess I was a diatribe. I didn't really say anything there, but just I'm interested. How about that? That's what I got.
Yeah, it's interesting with this, this whole effort to bring Jim Thorpe's body there, to memorialize him. There really was a tourism element of this from the start. They recognize it's like, okay, this is a figure of importance that's going to have a connection now to this town. We renamed the town after him. What's really interesting is now people don't know who Jim Thorpe is.
Right. Yeah.
And his memorial is probably one of the least visited places in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. It's kind of become a footnote. The town has gone on to become a just an incredible tourism, I don't know even how to say it, powerhouse. They are incredible at what they've been able to do in marketing their town, because they have their historic architecture, they have the natural beauty of the place, they have a rail trail along the canal and along the river. That's dozens of miles of trail. They have a historic railroad that comes into town and brings visitors in on weekends. And it's funny because it's actually a testament to Joe Boyle's failure at finding a new industry for Mauch Chunk, that they never were able to tear down the old buildings and build anew. In the 1970s and 1980s, the town had a ton of boarded up buildings, just like many American communities. Justin, you talked about kind of, Rust Belt communities all over, that this isn't just a Pennsylvania coal region story. This is this is kind of a universal story of this time period in American history in a lot of different communities. But now it's this thriving tourism mecca, and it has nothing to do with Jim Thorpe, the person that they thought was going to be the tourist attraction that was going to bring visitors there, which I just think is interesting. And I think gets back to the public history piece of this, of just like, when you're building something or memorializing somebody, you don't necessarily recognize, like, you're not thinking about how people 50 years from now or 100 years from now are going to remember that person.
Right.
And you see it with, going back to the Civil War era, statues of people that now we look at and we're like, It's a terrible idea. Why did anyone construct this statue of Jefferson Davis here? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Why is Robert E. Lee in New Orleans? He was never there. It's, I think that element brings that public history relevance of just like, thinking about these things and how memory of these people and places changes over time. And I think that that's an interesting component to this story as well.
Well, and then I guess to keep going off of that too, of have we as, and this is an open-ended question, I don't know the answer to this, have we as a society, like, who do we memorialize now, right? Like, I'm trying to think of what is the most recent statue that I can think of that's been memorialized that was for somebody within the lived memory or somebody that was still alive. Me and my sports brain just goes to sports figures, right? Like, I think of like all the different college football coaches who have statues outside the stadiums in which they were college football coaches. But like, I don't know, when was the last like statue for an industrialist, or last statue for even like a general, right? Like, are we making general like statues of Norman Powell right now? Like, how do we get past that? Like, I don't know. Maybe you guys have a more recent statue you can think of.
Molly, are you thinking who I'm thinking?
Who are you thinking?
I'm thinking my girl Claire McCardle.
Oh yeah.
So that's here in Frederick, Maryland. We have a statue of Claire McCardle, who's a fashion designer in the 1940s and 1950s, who's memorialized in Carroll Creek Park here in downtown Frederick. So
okay, so 40s and 50s, so that era fashion design. Wow, that's interesting.
Yep, she created dresses with pockets.
Oh wow, that needs to be Frederick's claim to fame.
We're working on it.
The sad part of this whole thing, though, is like nobody treated him well in life, and then nobody treated him well in death. So
absolutely.
Like people we're talking about are like people cared about them and at least thought about where they were going to erect whatever statue or memorial. Like, this was so shady and slapdash. I feel sad. Like, I want to have a real memorial for him and like really delve in to like celebrate him.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure that happens. Like, I have never been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's almost like the field trip I would want to take, right? I would want to go to Mauch Chunk, aka Jim Thorpe, aka Mauch Chunk, or East Mauch Chunk, whatever we were using it.
Go see the chunks.
Go see the chunks. I want to be an honorary chunker. And then, yeah, I'm curious, like, I don't know. I mean, to get to the big picture of American society right now, like, football is the most popular sport in the United States and is the most popular thing people watch on TV every single weekend. And the Pro Football Hall of Fame is in Canton, Ohio, and it's I assume well attended. I mean, I'm not sure they have a game there every year. I haven't ever been there, but I'd be interested to see the exhibits that they had on Jim Thorpe, because like before tonight, when you said Jim Thorpe, associated, yeah, he's a football player, right? Like a good football player, and that is what I remember Jim Thorpe the most about. Couldn't tell you who he played for or anything up until now, but like that is very true of, like, I don't know, like how does the most popular sport, the most popular thing in the United States talk about him, and then it just sounds like they talk about him without even talking about Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. So it's like they almost forget that, they just talk about him as a football player and less about what happened afterwards, because it's just messy and no one wants to talk about it.
Yeah. Yep. No, I feel what you were saying, Molly, too, about it. It is a sad story. It's a sad story all through his life, from his childhood and being taken from his family and moved across the country, not having a say in that, to the Olympics, which the medals were eventually restored to him as well. It's posthumous, so it's after his death. So again, it's not something he gets to experience. He did live to have a movie made about him, which is, it's pretty cool. It doesn't help him financially. But
sorry,
yeah.
Did you say?
What's that?
Lancaster?
Yep.
Come on, that's pretty cool.
We're gonna have to do a film screening of that.
Yeah. Well, so to make things I kind of went down the rabbit hole, Jake, of the who has responsibility of this and who enforces it. So the idea was in 1878, which was less than 3 years after Little Bighorn. And at least according to this that I'm looking at, the government believed that by removing the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota children from their homes, the U.S. would have leverage against the tribes in continuing attempt to acquire tribal land. So it's
Cool.
it's a leverage
Kidnapping.
play. Yeah, basically. And Pratt, who I guess is the person who founds the Carlisle School, says the children would be hostages for the good behavior of the people. So just to make the
Great.
story brighter. Yeah, kidnapping
You
and
know,
hostages. So
this gets to something that I've heard a lot recently, which is that this is not who we are. Like, this has always been who we are. We've always had this dark strain in American life that goes back to the founding, but before the founding, and these kinds of horrors in our history that, I mean, that
one thing you said, and I'm like, it's so dark, like taking, we're assimilating children, aka keeping them hostages. And then you said something kind of offhand where I was like focused on it, where you said sports was like pushed at the car. Like, why? Do you know what I mean? Like, because they wanted to like exploit them even more and like put them into some, you know what I'm saying? Like,
it was from, and this I have not looked at this specifically, but from a long time ago, research into this for a project I did back in college. It was a taming of the wild spirit.
And that's the reason for football, right? I think like even Teddy Roosevelt is a proponent for football because of and this is me not remembering this, but like the same, what you just said, taming of the wild spirit, right? Let's focus all this energy into organized games to make sure they're not off looking at pornography, right? Like that's basically what I take. And that soccer is the same way. Like I think of football, the establishment of football in England, it really took off, and it really was, a lot of these old clubs are trying to harness young energy into good life lessons as opposed to another path, which is bad things. Yeah. And like it's interesting to full circle moment, like the people who ran this school was the Department of the Interior ran the school. And I did not know this. In December of 2024, Carlisle Federal Indian Boarding School National Monument was designated by Joe Biden. So the Park Service now owns, it's now a national monument. President Biden made it a national monument. So it's full circle. The Department of the Interior was the one who ran it, and now the Department of the Interior is the one who will tell the story of it. And that's a fascinating kind of circle that I did not realize until today.
I want to go back to the sports piece of this, and the kind of military side of this. Is like, it's like proxy for conflict, for war. It's like somewhere else to put this energy. Something I encountered briefly, but didn't actually think about this too much when I was working on the research for this episode. But there was after he dies, there's a letter of condolence that's sent from Dwight D. Eisenhower to Patricia Thorpe, and I saw this briefly, but Dwight Eisenhower and Jim Thorpe actually played each other in college football. So Dwight Eisenhower was the leader of the West Point football team for the U.S. Army, and he goes up against Jim Thorpe playing for the Carlisle Indian School in 1912. So just a kind of weird,
that's crazy
connection.
That's wild. That's wild. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
Carlisle won 27-6.
Yeah.
West Point team. What the heck? Yeah. 27-6. Oh my gosh. Well, probably Jim Thorpe probably had like 3 touchdowns or something, because he was one of the best football players of all time. But wow.
Yep. So also say just thinking about that in the context of, all of the events in the 19th century of Native American communities and their conflict with the U.S. Army. And then all those years later, it's like, oh, it's on the football field, and Army gets their butts kicked.
Ah,
Army
good.
gets their butts kicked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have, if this wasn't sad enough, I have a sad chaser for us.
Oh, I know. I'm feeling so sad.
So part of the research as well. So a lot's been written about Joe Boyle, and his role in the revitalization of Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, Mauch Chunk, and he really was just this pivotal figure for the town's history in the second half of the 20th century, leading those efforts, leading the newspaper, and he really was a champion for the community. So I encountered the sad story of his demise in the course of this research, which is talking about recent history. This took place Memorial Day of 1992. He was killed in a parade float accident on Memorial Day of 1992 in Jim Thorpe. He was riding on the back of a float. The float became separated from the truck that was driving said float, and it rolled downhill into a tree. And that was the end of Joseph Boyle. A sad end, referred to as a freak accident. There were there was actually kids that were injured in it as well. But he was 77 when he passed away, and he was really celebrated as just a really important figure in this community. And they actually constructed in 1994 a historical marker to him, which I think this captures it pretty well. It just says the headline for it is "Joe Boyle made a difference." And I was like, oh, that's a moving tribute to this figure who has an important part to play in this whole bizarre drama. But I don't know how to feel about all of this. All of this that we've talked about tonight.
I like, to Joe Boyle's point, we are talking about Mauch Chunk, Pennsylvania.
It is true. It is true. So, yeah, that's the end of my story.
I feel like Joe went out in a way he would have, because it was Memorial Day. It was a parade. The man was a brilliant marketer. He was the number one influencer of the town. So yeah. I feel like you said that was going to be sad, but actually I think that was a nice ending for him. I think, don't you think?
I don't know. I think a lot about my demise. I will admit. That's not one that I would ever, what does it say? It's not on my bingo card. Parade float accident.
Yeah. He didn't see it coming. He wasn't, you know what I'm saying? So I think, yeah. You said Joe was complicated, but I like him. I gotta say. Right. I don't like that he was swayed in the end. Like, he didn't like the Jim Thorpe idea, and then he was like, you know what? This might help us. But like, the meta narrative of this is just like we're going to build a revitalization of our community around the body of this Native American who never lived in this community and who was celebrated but has kind of been forgotten, and we're going to bring him back, and he's going to be the centerpiece of our revitalization. It's a little weird. It's a little weird.
Thank you guys for joining for this episode. I learned a lot. I hope you guys did too. This is kind of what we're looking like to do this season for public history with Justin, Jake, and Molly. More untold or lesser told stories from America's past.
If you've been enjoying these episodes, our previous ones, and this new iteration of the show, be sure to give us a rating, give us a review as well. That helps more people to find this content, to find these stories, and help support our efforts here at the Public History Podcast.
And share it with your friends, guys. We want to thank you for joining us on this inaugural episode of the Rebranded Public History Podcast with Justin, Jake, and Molly. Bye.